Here's the thought.
Good morning. Welcome to the July 10th, 2025 meeting of the Budget, Capital, and Personnel Committee of Tompkins County Legislature. I'm Michael Lane, the chair. With us this morning in the chambers is Randy Brown and Deborah Dawson and Shauna Black. And on the screen is Veronica Pillar. Veronica, I don't think you're going to be able to vote this morning, but
that's correct.
And the other person that we have coming, we believe, is Lee Shurtleff this morning. He'll be joining us probably shortly. Changes to the agenda. Not on the agenda, we have a budget adjustment from the Highway Department. And I'm going to put that under County Administrator's report because I think it has to do with a discussion we're going to have about the budget adjustment process. We'll do that after the discussion. I know Jeff Smith is here, and I know that Katrina McCloy would like to be present for that discussion. And she has to leave at 9:30, so we want to move that up. And we've just been joined by Lee Shurtleff. Is there any public comment this morning? You want to speak? Not seeing any? Taylor, the resolution concerning the tax stabilization reserve. Do we have to add that?
Nope. It's
there was a placeholder on the agenda for that. The only thing I think we have to add is the Highway Department.
That's right. It's F. Yeah, I was going to say. All right, so now we have the verbiage for that. Can we take minutes of June 12? Deborah? Seconded by Shauna. Any discussion? Those in favor? Any opposed? That's unanimous. I have appointments to the advisory board, and we have to appoint Daryl Tuttle to get the right page here. I'm sorry, I thought that was the appointment for Daryl. We're appointing Samantha Almendinger to the Workforce Diversity and Inclusion Advisory Committee. Someone want to move that? Moved by Shauna, seconded by Deborah. Do we need an executive session for that? Ready to vote? Those in favor? Any opposed? That's unanimous. For my report, I would simply say that the New York State Legislature has been called back into session. I don't know exactly what days they'll be coming in, but the reason for their session is because of the passage at the federal level of the massive bill that just made it through by one vote. What that means for us, we don't exactly know, and that's it. We're just out in limbo. I mean, Corsa may have heard more than I have, but we just simply have to be nimble and be able to respond when we find out what kind of cuts might be passed down to us. Deborah may have some information too. Deborah, go ahead.
Well, just from what I've been reading, the piece of major concern to us as a county in New York State is obviously the Medicaid cuts. As I understand it from what I'm reading, those are slated to go into effect after next year's midterms. So what we need to
You don't suppose that was politically
Well, yes.
set up, do you?
But be that as it may, that does give us a couple years to try to prepare ourselves and plan for it proactively.
And I hope that that's true, but the state could be taking action that we might have to be responding to sooner than that.
Yeah, but that's the timetable as far as I understand it.
All right.
Is the read on it, the changing eligibility for Medicaid recipients for the most part, and whether the state would be wanting to expand beyond what the federal government is now saying they would pay for?
Well, I thought that we had already done the expansion that was permissible, and now the issue is how these work requirements, for example, are going to play out and who it's going to eliminate.
Yeah. Right, that's my understanding. Most recently, they're saying that we can replace the immigrants on the farms with Medicaid recipients. We'll see if that happens, but that's the latest I've heard.
But I would assume the state could always reconsider what their policies are in between and what they're willing to take on at below the 90% average federal reimbursement, which was extended out for new classes.
Well, that was under the ACA, so if they succeed in gutting the ACA, that's going to fall by the wayside as well.
Yeah, there are two ways to eliminate a program. One is to rescind it, and the other is to not fund it.
Yeah.
And that's what's going to be happening. I'm afraid a lot of people that have health insurance now are going to be losing it, and that means more people will be applying for Medicaid.
Yeah.
So.
And then I'm not sure when the impact of the SNAP cuts is going to go into effect. Corsa, do you have any idea? Have you heard anything?
From the discussion so far, it shows in 2027.
Okay,
So
after the midterms.
After the midterms. So I think currently we're waiting for a report from NACO to really demonstrate the county impact. Is almost 10,000 or 1,000-page legislation. So we rely on NACO and NISA to give a synopsis of the county level impact so that we have a clear idea how that will affect us.
Okay.
Mike, I see Kit's hand raised.
Who, Kit?
Yes.
Good morning, Kit.
Good morning, everybody. Thanks. I just wanted to let you know, we do anticipate that those Medicaid cuts will not hit until, like Corsa said, probably 2027 or late 2026. I think that they're going to be pretty significant across the state. They're anticipating right now that about 1.7 million New Yorkers will lose Medicaid entirely, but we don't yet know full details of all of that. We did have a briefing yesterday on SNAP from OTDA, and those impacts are going to hit much sooner. The projection on that right now is that we will be seeing in the next month or two some new work requirements, and we don't know, and OTDA couldn't tell us exactly, but according to the bill, many of those impacts could go into effect immediately, which might mean that by the time we get notified, there will actually be retroactive impacts. And the other thing that's a little bit scary is that when a lot of what's going to be determining how a lot of what's going to be determining the fiscal impact of SNAP hits across the state are error rates. And I don't know if people are aware, but when you calculate errors, when the state calculates errors for the feds, errors can be things like if somebody applies for SNAP and is not working but gets a job and then reports it, but the calculations on the case don't occur to change their status for a week, which is a very reasonable turnaround. It might take the client a week to report that they've gotten a job and they're working, and it might take staff much longer than that to actually make changes on the case. All of those things can be considered errors. And right now, OTDA is anticipating that about $1.7 billion may be calculated by the feds as impacts to New York State as errors. So if that 1.7 billion gets called back by the feds, that may impact counties, and we don't know yet, but that's kind of what they were talking about yesterday. So as I know more, I will share that, and obviously I won't be around too much longer, but the new commissioner probably will. They will share that with county administration, but I think as far as this committee goes, it can be anticipated that there are going to be hits related to SNAP and Medicaid, and SNAP probably sooner. So,
Well,
for what that's worth.
That's terrific, and we know what those issues of errors can mean when they come back at us. A few years ago, they were complaining about some of our cases, and we had to negotiate what they were trying to initiate penalties against the county. I think it was over $1 million at that time. But
yeah, this is going to be a statewide. The difference is now what they had been saying in terms of errors were related to audits. Tompkins County has an excellent rate around our accuracy. We're at about 87%. It used to be, and many counties right now, because they have real staff shortages and so on, they're much lower than that. We've done really well, and we've improved our accuracy rate since the pandemic. The challenge right now is that the federal government is now telling the states anything less than 100% accuracy for SNAP calculations is going to be considered a significant deficit and is going to result in state penalties. The problem is that, as I just explained, you can't ever achieve 100% accuracy rate. Changes in people's lives necessitate changes on the cases, and if those are perceived as errors, it creates a problem. So it's going to be a challenging time.
Shauna?
I met with some of the employees the other day at Planned Parenthood, and one of the things that they're very concerned about is women's care, as well as abortion care and care for individuals that are undergoing hormone therapy. And some of their funding obviously has been through Medicaid for some of those services, but what they're really concerned about, and they're actually closing clinics around New York State. They did close one in Manhattan, and then they're closing clinics, like I mentioned, through New York State, is that they're seeing funding cuts not just through Medicaid. The National Institute of Health is cutting some of their funding. AIDS Institute, there's no more funding for people that have HIV and AIDS. And then Oasis, who does the substance abuse, is also seeing really big cuts. And, while we can say it's just Planned Parenthood, it's not. It's Southern Tier AIDS Program, Reach Medical, Human Services Coalition. All of our nonprofits are going to be suffering and have already received some of some of those funding cuts. And so I certainly would not be surprised if we see some more requests coming through Human Services Coalition to make up for that gap. But just the heads up on that.
That's good. Go ahead, Deborah.
Yeah, and further to that, yesterday at the IDA, we had a group of stakeholders come in who were dealing with the problems that we've been having at Asteri. Reach Medical, for example, depends entirely almost on Medicaid to reimburse for the services it provides. And of course, substantial cuts to the Medicaid program, especially for the population that Reach serves, are in the offing now. And I'm sure they're going to be coming to us to some extent to make up that difference.
Kit, if you're still there, I wanted to ask if you heard anything in that meeting about long-term care on Medicaid. Has there been any changes there?
There have been many changes, but we are not right now seeing major cuts to that. We are, the thing that's concerning there, Mike, is that we're actually meeting with DOH today because they are, again, they are sending us information requiring 100% compliance. Again, it sounds reasonable, but when you actually look at what they mean by that, they are threatening withholds of and fiscal sanctions to counties if there's not 100% compliance, and there's just no way to achieve that in the way that they mean it. So we're meeting with them today actually to talk a little bit about what some of the documentation they've sent us and some of the other counties to try to find out how can we work with them and how can we make sure that we're meeting everything that they require. But right now, I'm not hearing significant cuts to long-term care. They have already changed a number of processes that are making it harder for people to access that care and get signed up for it. But that's been a couple of years in the making.
Thank you. Anything else on my administrator's report? Let's go to Veronica. Veronica, do you have any information this morning you'd like to update us on for workforce diversity and inclusion?
Well, thank you for approving the nomination of a new member to workforce diversity and inclusion. We're excited to hopefully have Samantha soon. WDIC last met on whatever the day was, last Wednesday in June, and one thing that we discussed there was the effective allyship training that Team Jedi, that's Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion for anyone watching, and Charlene Holmes hosted for us a few weeks ago now. So I was on vacation, time is difficult. And I'd really, well, first the training, it was great. There were 2 sessions. I attended one of them, and we got to hear at the WDIC meeting, got to hear a lot of feedback and discussion from both. There were a few of us who had attended training sessions. There were a couple people, I mean, Charlene was there, and Rachel Graham from Team Jedi, who had been one of the facilitators, was there. And it opened up, it so happens that one of our WDIC members was very involved in developing the statewide sexual harassment training, anti-sexual harassment training that we all take every year. And it evolved into a really good discussion, not just about that effective allyship training itself, but also the value of employees of an organization coming together to discuss whatever is the content of like workplace culture related training. In this case, the allyship training is highly important for belonging and equity within our workplace culture. So I guess I'd recommend watching, if you haven't, the WDIC meeting. This discussion is in the first, not the very beginning, but the first part-ish. There's also, Charlene shared that there's going to be another effective allyship training in the fall sometime, and with times shifted differently, because these were both in standard business hours, but obviously a lot of our employees work different shifts. So she's going to try to include more people, and I think it was an unusual and really good place to discuss specific scenarios and some difficult issues with various employees across departments. And actually not just county employees, there were some people from the public library there as well, because Charlene had reached out to the library about using their space, and the discussion spawned library employees joining as well. So that was really cool. That was the main highlight there from our meeting.
Thank you for that report. Any questions?
How's your vacation?
Right. Well, now I'm in a hotel at a conference at the Local Progress National Convening, but vacation was great. I was in San Francisco and it was not hot and humid at all.
Good.
Let's go to, under the county administrator's report, if we could, Corsa. I'd like to bring up this issue of budget adjustment process discussion.
Okay, thank you very much. I think being here a few months, one of the things I'm learning is the process of some of the way some of these actions are taken. From my reading of the policy, there's requests for finance and also county administration to review budget amendment request that comes into the legislature for approval or to committee for approval. But what has happened over the time is some of these requests get submitted directly into Mini's truck. That gets its way into the agenda before the review process has actually happened. So there are a few instances whereby we are not able to review and approve it, or nothing, even if I take away the word of approval, just to review to make sure it makes sense for us to amend the budget as being requested at the time. Sometimes it finds its way to the agenda. We don't have a workflow process in place that allows the approval process to happen or that review process to happen. So we are having a conversation with Katrina to make sure we develop a workflow process that will allow us to be required to review all the budget amendment before it makes its way to Mini's truck. So administratively, what we are going to be changing is the resolution for budget amendments with the supporting information be submitted to county administration, and it becomes county administration responsibility at a time to submit the budget amendment request to Mini's truck to be included in the agenda, so that at least it gives us and finance ability to evaluate and make sure it makes sense. Because my understanding of budget amendment is a department doesn't have sufficient funds based on what has been approved, or there are changes to their programming, so they need additional funding to provide those services. But I'm seeing a lot of budget amendment whereby there's already sufficient funding in the budget for them to actually utilize for what they are going to use for, and then we are making those amendments beginning of the year, few weeks or few months within the year. It doesn't satisfy the right accounting principles. You should be asking for an amendment when you're running out of money and providing a justification why that amendment is necessary. But we are seeing a lot more direct department to committee requests for budget amendment without finance and budget office reviewing those requests and making sure it is necessary.
So if I may, I mean, I hear what you're saying. You want to be able to evaluate it before we approve it.
Yes.
But one thing I question, you said you shouldn't be asking for a budget adjustment unless you're out of money. As I understand our budget process here, to some extent, we allocate money to departments for specific uses. So my experience has been that some of these budget adjustments, the department's not out of money, but they want to use something we allocated for a purpose, for some other purpose. So, I mean, as I understand it, that's a valid budget adjustment. So I just want to be sure that that's understood by everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. So that usually falls into the prism of budget transfers, which the department do have power to move money from one line to the other. I believe up to 25,000. That they just need to send a request to finance. Finance will just review it and approve it. That is moving from one program line to the other within their budget.
So do you want to have time to review those as well?
I don't have a lot of, I think finance is doing a really good job in terms of you doing some of those review process. Unfortunately, what we have seen is sometimes those procurements are even done before those requests for adjustment is happening. So last month, we did review our financial system, and we saw close to $2 million in negative budget lines. Basically, purchases that has gone through without the adjustment being done in the first place. That shouldn't happen.
No, it shouldn't.
Yes. So we are looking at how do we ensure, because the difficulty with finance is they receive an invoice to pay John Doe for services they have already provided to the county. Finance cannot just sit on that invoice because amendment hasn't been done. John Doe has to be paid. They're business people, they need their money for supplies they have given to the county. It is our responsibility to make sure the money is in the right line before that procurement even happens. That is not happening. And those are some of the things that we are trying to make sure we strengthen up, so that at least we don't get dinged at some point by auditors saying that the accounts are negative. County accounts should not ever be negative, apart from payroll lines. Because payroll lines, even if we don't have money, we have to pay the individuals, and then we do adjustment at the end of the year. Finance does a good job adjusting lines at the end of the year, those negative lines, but that burden should not be on the finance at the end of the year. It should be on the department to make sure there is money in the line before they procure supplies. So that's one side of it. The other side of it is just a regular department budget amendments, because maybe either they get extra funding from program or other funds coming in. One of the questions I used to ask a lot is, department comes in, I got this grant, I want to amend my budget. And then if you query a little bit further, are you ready to implement this program? Oh no, it will take a couple of months or even a year. We do not need to amend our budget at a time, because you're not using that money anyway. We can wait when you're ready to actually implement that program. That's when you amend the budget, because basically the budget amendment, yes, we have had difficulty with the staffing and stuff with the finance and posting it, but my understanding is if the legislatures approve a budget amendment, finance within a few days should just post it. And if you're not ready to use the money, why do we post money? Give you power to spend it if actually the program hasn't well been defined or set up yet.
Well, what about local matches, though? I mean, at what point are we required to meet the local match requirement in order to get the money?
That's when the program is being implemented. So most of the time, for example, county administration applied for a grant of $50,000 for a $70,000 project. The local match becomes the program delivery process itself. Okay. So we need to demonstrate to the agency that we are seeking reimbursement from that we have spent $70,000 on this project, and they're giving us back the $50,000. So we actually need budget amendment when we actually want to spend it. The great thing is, yes, committee meets once a month. I don't think if we are being on top of our programs and processes properly, I'm not saying that unexpected expenditure item will not happen. They will. That we will act quickly to make sure the funds are available. But we should know, we should be able to monitor our budget and know that where things are, so that if there's a need for an amendment, we are doing it in time to make sure we are aware of what is going on. And we do not, I'm talking about county admin and finance, do not want to delay processes for department. We just want to be aware of what is happening so that we can plan appropriately. The difficulty is sometimes we get surprised with some of these requests. And as I try to go behind the scene and look at the numbers, it doesn't make sense to me, because if a budget line has $100,000 in it, and you say you need just a budget amendment of, I'm just using the numbers, $10,000 now because I have to buy something, you have money in there already. So we don't have to do it now, it just has to make sense.
Okay. Are we going to pass a new policy, or is this just an information item for us? The current policy requires review process by county admin and finance for this budget amendment and finance. So we don't need to amend the policy for that. We're just trying to make the department aware of the process.
so that at least if there's a need for an amendment, they know that finance and admin need to review and approve it before submitting it into minute truck. Because sometimes there's a lot all of us are dealing with. Katrina get requests, she put in the agenda, and then we come to, maybe we'll pull the agenda at some point, maybe for me, maybe 2-3 days before the meeting, but like, why do we need to do this amendment? So we're trying to make sure that at least we know and we are in the value chain, then we'll be having good conversation with finance to make sure we are all understanding the reason why these things are needed so that we can move things quickly. Departments sometimes get disappointed when finance delaying approval of some of their requests, not because finance is excited with those delays. Finance also struggles sometimes based on why is this request being made at this time. And then it's taking them longer period for them to review it and approve it because maybe sometimes financially it doesn't make sense or there's no supporting document to even process some of those payments or some of those approvals.
I think it's really important, the point you made about the timing of these things and not delaying them beyond what is reasonable. And I know that, Katrina, you have to get these on the agenda. And Daryl, you may have comments on this as well. So do either of you want to talk about it?
I agree with what Corsa says, but we're going to have to communicate out to departments that they need to be submitted earlier to allow for the proper review by county admin and finance.
Yes.
And I'll work with county admin and finance both to come up with a good policy and plan moving forward.
I agree with Corsa as well. There are situations where the amendment gets into minute track with a day or less for us to even review before it gets to the committee or approved. And there's been a few situations where a resolution has been approved with errors, and in some cases, errors where we couldn't do the budget adjustment period and had to send it back to resolution. So I agree with Corsa that if we had more of an opportunity to review beforehand, it would be very helpful.
Okay. Other questions?
No, when you come back to the discussion, you may want to give us a little crash course on the difference between transfers and adjustments and how those work within the specific budget lines, because I always understood transfers to be revenue or expense neutral. It's one line to another to cover within a subcategory, and you couldn't go between programs. Maybe that's changed in 5 years. The other thing with the adjustments is your timing. And I'm kind of curious if there is some unexpected revenue or grants later in the year, you know, as we're going through the budget process or closing out the year, are you going to impair a department from being able to go ahead and begin to administer those programs? Because one of the downsides is, as you're mentioning, there may be balances in the line, and you may cause a department to spend those down, but if you're not recognizing that revenue ahead of time, then it does create the demand for an adjustment on the heels of that in an abrupt manner sometimes, because you get to the point and it's like, well, I spent that $100,000 expecting that I'm going to have a budget revenue tied to a budget adjustment tied to this revenue or what have you. So, you know, I can see the department side on this one a little bit, and how you approach it is, you know, more timing than anything else.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's more has to do with the communication and engagement between finance, us, and the departments, because it makes sense to make sure things move quickly when it comes to us for review, for that review process. Our department, from my understanding, have a lot of discretion in terms of moving money from one line to the other. And we trust the department's decision-making process in terms of that kind of actions. And they also do get frustrated sometimes when they are requesting the moving of the money from one line to the other because of the time it takes finance to review it. one thing I just want to say is the legislatures approved the budget for us. The funds are put in the budget in specific line for specific purpose that has been approved for. If we want to spend the money for something else, it has to be clear. So for example, if finances approve, if legislatures has approved for county administration to spend $10,000 to buy office supplies, for example, and for any reason we decide that no, we don't need to buy $10,000 worth of office supplies, so we're going to use it to buy a vehicle, there should be a justification for that purchase. Not just because we have the money, we can just spend it. So it's a collaboration. The department need to understand, yes, the fact that the budget has been approved doesn't mean we have discretion to spend on whatever we want. The purchases has to make sense, and it need to fit the organizational objectives as well. Because the bottom line is, even we have to provide a balanced budget, and it's countywide, not just at the department specific. So the more we are able to make informed decisions with our finances, the more it affects other departments as well. Because if I'll say this, we usually don't review a lot in terms of grants and state funding and federal funding that comes into the request process. We do a lot of review of the local matters. We should be doing the same level of review on everything, because county administration does not receive money, so we have entitlement to that money. Tompkins County receives all the money we get through the departments, so we have a responsibility of review of all those money that comes in whichever department, and making sure we are expanding the money based on the provisions and guidelines of those funding. So at the end of the day, if county administration is reckless in administering a specific grant, Tompkins County government pays it back if there's a demand for it. So we're trying to make sure that, and we want the department to also see us as partnership in this, so that all of us are working together, making sure we are using the resources that we are having properly, and tapping into those external funding as much as possible. Because at the end of the day, if we are going through difficult times, we need to make sure the funding available to us through various sources are being maximized, so that, like a friend of mine said, we are not leaving anything on the table. Because at the end of the day, if there's an opportunity to use $100,000 in the grants and the department use just about $60,000, the county maybe is paying, maybe we could have used the maximum amount if there's that engagement, if there's that collaboration with the way some of those funding have been provided. So it's just about improving our processes and engaging better on the way we do things.
Randy, then Deborah.
Oh, no, I was just pointing Randy out.
Flagging for me. So, thanks, Corsa, for that. Yeah, when we've gotten some budget changes from like the Office of the Aging, where they got revenue that they know they're going to get, or got increased over what they were initially told. Same with youth services. And the way they do those is helpful for legislature to see how the changes are happening. But to your point of some budget lines being overspent, I agree that should be looked at before we get through our budget process to see the impact. But also revenue is more important, because as we're looking at our revenue is going to change, our reimbursements may change. Understanding those revenue potential decreases is going to be helpful. And I know our OpenGov system is a big improvement over where we've been in the past. But when you look at that, you look and go, wait a minute, we're like $10 million short on this particular revenue line. I don't understand that. And maybe it's timing and it's accounts receivable that hasn't come in yet or whatever. But I think analysis of that's really important. So I'm glad you're thinking about that.
Yeah, thank you. We have had some lapses over years with some of the way we post receipts, some of the way we get some of our reimbursement in. There is lapses. It's not because the department are not doing a good job. They are doing an amazing job. But there is still some degree of lapses in some of those processes. So I have had a conversation with Darrell. One of the things we are looking to do is how do we improve on some of those accountabilities so that we know exactly what is being pending. Because I'm not sure we can say, for example, how much have been submitted, maybe whole health or DSS that is being, we are waiting for it to come in. We have to push, maybe you have to reach out to Thomas, and Thomas has to dig into his stuff to know how much is submitted and being pending. It's good that we know that maybe $1,000 has been submitted. We are still waiting for that to come in. And also then we have an idea what our finances will look like. Because with the finance, as soon as those reimbursement comes in, they will post it. Right. And I haven't seen it yet, but if we are in better control and coordination of those processes, sometimes a department may file a claim for $100,000, but they did budget for $80,000 in revenues, and then there are instances whereby department will come in because they got an extra $20,000. They are asking for maybe budget amendment to spend that extra $20,000. It shouldn't be, because you only spend money you need to spend on specific programs. So it's just a process improvement that we are hoping that we can bring in so that we all will work together and use the money.
We look forward to your reporting back to us on how this process has developed. We're glad your department is on top of this.
Thank you.
I wanted to insert this resolution. It wasn't on the agenda for the budget adjustment. Highway Department increased 2025 Consolidated Highway Improvement Program funding. That's CHIPS. And the reason I wanted to do that was because I sort of think this coming up in F&I was kind of generated this discussion that we just had, which is fine. So I wonder if we could get this on the table. Moved by Lee, seconded by Deborah. Jeff Smith is with us on Zoom. Do you want to speak to this, Jeff? At least I think he's with us.
In spirit?
I am.
Hi there.
I'm trying to get, when you do a laptop, your mouse kind of gets lost between a few monitors. Sorry about that. Yeah. Couple things. Speaking from a department head for across the board, all department heads, we're doing our budget now. And we have no idea come January, even into April 1st, when the state budget gets released, how much we're going to have to move money around. The budget is a live document, so we need very smooth ability to move money from accounts to accounts. And I think what's been working has been working. I'm sure there's some exceptions to that, but I think it's important to not slow the process down in that area. I think this example of a resolution getting caught up the way it did is a poor example. This one is a very commonplace resolution we've done probably 9 different times in the 13 years that I've been here. It's very necessary. I want to also say that when I submitted it, it wasn't a conversation with administration. It was completely 2 different times. I emailed Norma 2 different times. I was denied even talking about it. There was no discussion. It was just getting denied. And I had to push very hard to even get it on the floor to be discussed at F&I.
We're not criticizing the fact that you brought this forward.
Well, I know that, but I feel like a little background is necessary, and the process and the resolution is very important to get our full allotment in CHIPS reimbursement and balance the budget. There's no expense. It'll allow us to pave another 2.5 miles of road this year.
And so it's just adding this extra money that's coming from the state budget, is that right?
Correct.
It's budget neutral.
Right.
Budget neutral.
Well, it adds, your budget is whatever CHIPS gives you, right?
Correct. The state tells us what we are allowed to spend on chips, and then we have to spend it first and then being reimbursed for it afterwards.
Lee, then Randy?
Is it time sensitive, Jeff, in that the window you've got to work within the paving and ordering of materials and weather cooperation and so on?
Yeah, absolutely. It's all of that, Lee. Thank you. The sooner we know we have it to spend, the sooner we can begin getting projects lined up.
Okay.
Randy?
Yeah, my question, so Jeff, thanks for that. So if you don't spend this money, you don't get it, right? That's the theory?
Correct.
Right.
Yep, you got to spend it first.
Okay, all right.
Anything else on this one? Ready to vote? All those in favor? Are there any opposed? That's unanimous. Thank you, everybody, and thanks for that discussion. Can I go back just for a minute, and then before we pick up Corsa again, to talk about what's on your desk, which is a draft, and this is a draft, not a finalization at all, of the EBC schedule that's been worked on by Katrina McCloy mostly, and in consultation with me. And I want folks to be aware of it. We had to make a couple of adjustments here, then I think we've corrected it so we don't have a meeting that interferes with the Rosh Hashanah holiday. And one thing that I did want to ask you folks was the budget forum that we have. What time of day should that be? I think we've been doing it like at 7 o'clock, but I think maybe last year we did it earlier. Does anyone have opinions on that? Donna?
I was looking at the calendar here, and I thought that we had agreed to actually have another budget retreat prior to having these presentations so that we could get an update from Corsa on where the starting point for our budget was.
I think that would be that would be in
August.
in 2 weeks, a week.
Do we get
I believe it's 23rd.
email for that?
Has it been scheduled?
No, we didn't get an invite yet.
Yeah, it's the fourth Wednesday because it interferes with the Historical Commission. Fine.
I'm sorry, what day was that?
I believe it was scheduled. 1 second.
Because I don't think I ever saw an email on that.
22nd, I think.
I can't remember one, but
Can't
then
remember the
I'm
date.
brain dead from vacation.
Mike, I see Samantha raising her hand.
Samantha's got her hand up, yeah. Maybe she
Hi,
knows.
everyone.
Yes,
I have it as July 23rd from 5:30 to 8. Well, 5:30 to when it's over. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I'm not trying to understand what you're saying now. You want to do what?
July 23rd,
July 23rd.
Oh,
5:30.
Starting at 5:30 for the budget, the second budget retreat.
the second budget retreat, all right.
Could you send a calendar invite out for that, please? Thank you.
To everyone.
Yep, absolutely.
Thank you.
That's a tough one for me, but I may be able to get another board to shift their meeting a week to the 5th Wednesday, so. But I just warn you ahead of time, I may not
Thank
be
you.
here. Or be late.
Mike, how long were you thinking that each one of these presentations was going to last?
Till the next morning.
Yeah, they typically do.
Last year, we got a lot of them, some of them done in an hour and a half, some of them we did in 2.5. So I would think that probably figuring 2 hours.
Okay.
So back on the issue of the budget forum, what time of day do we want to run that? You think more people would come earlier or later?
What's the average attendance? What's-
0.
Yeah, zip.
Sometimes we get 0, sometimes we get, if there's a particular issue. There might be some issues with if there are cuts in the budget this year, or,
Robert Lynch, 1.
Well, I'm just thinking about it, they've been traditionally at 7 o'clock, right?
Yes.
And we
Yeah.
drive in and nobody's here or one person's here. Maybe something a little earlier because that coincides with
Maybe
the end of
6.
the workday for a lot of our affiliated agencies and
I like that
some of the
idea.
public that
What do
may
you-
be driving home to the rural areas and not wanting to drive back.
What would you propose, like
5:30.
6:30 or 6, 5:30?
Okay, that's great.
Because we keep staff here too for that period of time.
That's true.
Yes,
Okay.
it'll be broadcasted, I think. So we want to do 5:30. Okay. Anything else on, it hit you? You haven't had much chance to look at this, but please consider it, and if there are problems, let us know. All right, let's go back to Corsa. Corsa, would you like to report to us?
I think I don't have any additional report in line of everything we discussed today, so
All right.
thank you.
We do have another resolution under administration, adjustment to the 2020-25 budget, city-county sales tax distribution agreement. That's ID 13208. Someone want to move that one? Deborah? Sauna? Discussion about that. It's the formula.
So this, again, is budget neutral as far as the
Yes.
county is concerned. It's just a question of how we distribute additional sales tax to the city.
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Randy?
Yeah, so is this, this is for 2024? Or is this for this so far this year?
No, this year's funding. I invite Samantha to speak to it.
Hello. Yes, this is for 2025 based on 2024's sales tax revenue.
So basically you're reconciling it all and then, so is there any money going to the city or is just purely to show where it went?
No, this is this is the funding that we pay the city of Ithaca. So that will be quarterly payments for 2025 to the city of Ithaca from the proceeds we brought in last year for sales tax.
It's just how we're distributing last year's,
Okay.
but we're
Yes.
doing it this year.
I was just curious if we were holding it and now we're sending it out. That was my question, I guess.
Technically, yes. We pay a year behind so that we are more accurate on our payments to the city of Ithaca.
Great, thank you.
Because we don't know how much we have to distribute until the year closes out, right?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Although some of these allocations are already set in policy as to what they will be each year. Dispatch agreement, for instance, which should never have been in there to begin with and shouldn't be continued after 20 years.
Here we go. Editorial comment.
Well, and we've talked about that here before about taking a look at this past history to see if it's really worth revisiting some of these things.
But we'd have to open the whole agreement, which
Right.
is why we've never done it.
Right. But some of these are actual mandated numbers that carry over year to year or so.
Prior directors of finance, and I'm talking several of them, have recommended that we not reopen it.
Yeah.
What's interesting, though, is it appears from the recent sales tax reports that the city's sales tax is increasing more than anywhere else. So I think they're at like 9%.
Yeah, because everything's moving down to Route 13.
Right.
Moved out of
right,
Deborah's district.
Right.
Yes, thank you very much.
The villages in Cortland County would agree with you, Mike. Don't reopen this. They just did a formula over there in a major shift to the towns in the county and took tens of thousands of dollars away from the villages, and they're worried about the impact on their local
Yeah.
budgets, so it's a fraught discussion when it happens.
We distribute ours, I think, the most fair way. It's not based on population, because everybody spends money for sales and pays sales tax. In Cortland, I know they, part of their formula is the assessed value, which shifts a huge amount of the payment to Cortlandville.
I'm sure that's just a coincidence.
Whatever you say. All right, so shall we vote on this? Those in favor? Any opposed? That's unanimous. All right, where are we? I think we're up to Darrell Tuttle, Director of Finance.
So today marks my 4th day as Director of Finance.
Already?
Thank you. So far, it's been great.
And you're still here.
Yes. I wanted to point out, normally at this time, I'd be presenting quarterly reports, the second quarter for sales tax and gambling and all that. Due to transition and timing, they will be presented the next BCP meeting. We have just received last week a draft of our financial statements. Finance is going to take an opportunity to review them, and then that should also be presented at the BCP meeting next time.
So we act as in the last few years, the whole BCP committee has been acting as the review committee for that.
Okay.
We haven't had a subcommittee, for example.
So this is from the audit?
Yes, this is the draft from the audit, and when finance looks at it, we're looking at it just mainly make sure everything makes sense and the numbers match ours.
Okay, so we'll put that on the, probably put that first thing on the agenda next time.
Yes.
And so, because you'll bring people in from the auditors to talk to us, right?
Yes, from Insero.
Okay.
I know some of you have been receiving emails about the AFR and the AUD. That should be submitted, if not today, by tomorrow. We're finishing that up right now.
Can you, for the benefit of people at home, can you say what AFR and AUD are?
Well, it was previously known as the AUD, which stands for Annual Update Document. I believe AFR is Annual Financial Report. What it is it is the report that is sent to the state that kind of gives them all our information from our financials in the format that they require. That also goes to all the work that they do and present it on their website.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Of course, I have a question.
No, not a question, but after the submission of the report, we will review it and also provide you a presentation, hopefully, if not next month, the following month BCP, for you to know exactly where we are in terms of our finances, and then you have a better understanding or better idea where our favorite topic, which is the fund balance position, is at the time.
So are you talking about the GFR or are you talking about the audit?
The AFR. So after submission, we're able to then know exactly what our cash position is and everything else. That we will provide you a synopsis of it so that you can, that will guide our decision making going into the budget process as well.
Thank you. Anything else, Darrell?
Yes. In the past 6 months or so, we've had quite a bit of staffing challenges. However, I'm proud to say that with the exception of the position that I just left to become Director of Finance, we're completely either they have started or we have offered them a position and they have accepted. So,
well, that's good news.
Yay.
It's fantastic news. We're working on training everyone, getting everyone up to speed. I also wanted to mention an accomplishment of one of my employees, Alaric Softly, who is our Director of Accounting Services, has just completed his final exam for his CPA.
Wow.
Excellent.
So he will get his certification shortly. Now this is not something that's required to work in government finance. However, it's a great achievement and it brings a lot of value, especially when it comes to financial reporting and us being prepared for the external audit every year.
interesting, I just read that the board who does the CPA accreditation is changing some of the rules to allow more, I think it's more time counted working before they actually take the test than they had before. There was a certain amount of time they had to work before they could take the test. There's some change there that I just read about.
Yeah, they've been talking about changes to the work requirement, which, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe you have to work under a CPA in certain realms for a certain length of time. They've also talked loosely about aligning it, because every state has slightly different requirements, aligning it federally and nationally.
So if that were to happen, I hope that that would make it a little easier to find staff.
And lastly, I'm going to present about our tax foreclosure auction. Drew's online, so he knows it better than I did since he did the tour. I'll let him present it.
Good morning, everybody.
Yeah, why don't we put the resolution on the table and then hear from Drew. Deborah's moving it, seconded by Randy. And this is the resolution to execute quitclaim deed sale of the foreclosure properties. Now, Drew, go ahead.
So thank you for that. You have the resolution there for the 6 properties that the county is representing to be sold. We actually had 9 go to auction. 2 of them belong to the city. They took the lead on it, although we did share with one, but they'll pay us our portion of that. On that, we had 1 parcel that did not sell. I did put a memo in that shows the major steps that we did before we went to auction, and compliments, kudos out to our treasury staff, Leisha Shaw and Michelle and Leanne. They worked very hard finding people and whittling down. As you recall, when Lori Scarrett was presenting some of the numbers that we were foreclosing on, we were in the dozens of properties. Started with almost 100 properties. And so taking 9 of them to auction was a great feat for them. Overall, it was a very successful auction. We got the parcels, all but 1 will go back on the tax rolls. And of the ones going on the tax rolls, there will be a surplus that can be claimed by the owners after that's filed with the courts, and the courts have a process that gets out of our hands and goes to them. The one that does not have a surplus was one that has been in foreclosure for 25 years now. We did not, just high level, we did not move to auction on it because we did not want to take title because of DEC liabilities. DEC gave us a report that we did share to all bidders and basically gave I won't say a clean bill of health, but no concern bill of health. There was still a buried tank there, and that was a former gas station on Danby Road. So we will see a loss on that property because taxes were not paid for so long. Although the taxes recently were very minimal to the tune of a few $100s a year, it was, when they first stopped paying taxes, it was an ongoing business. So it was assessed at as a business, and after they closed, they did remove the buildings, which then allowed us to lower the assessment, which then lowered the tax item. The only other issue we did encounter, this was our first year as an online auction, and I would say very successful. We have a couple things to work through. We've been working with Maury on a couple things. We have 1 parcel that the top bidder backed out on. Talking with other counties, they have this happen about every 100 parcels or so that they've sold, from what I've gotten from other counties. So it's not a very common item at all. And I wouldn't say it's a reason to change things. We're looking at options maybe to discourage it. But most counties just roll that parcel into the next year's auction. So we're working with Maury to determine if that's the best route to go on this. We did offer it to the backup bidder. The backup bidder, they have to match the top bid, and they were not interested in doing that. So I think that's all I have to report on that, unless there's any questions.
Shauna has a question.
I don't have a question in regards to the auction. I do have a question for Maury. I've received 2 constituent calls asking in regards to our constituents, if they make the choice not to pay federal taxes, what the repercussion could be in that.
Not to pay what kind of federal tax?
Income.
I don't know whether that's a county attorney question or not, Shauna?
Yeah. It's definitely above my pay grade.
I have a little bit of, I mean, the answer is that they would be subject to federal tax enforcement action. I wouldn't predict, I usually won't predict how a case will come out, but I think we can fairly well predict that if it's a decision to not pay taxes, to make a political statement or about what the government is doing, that they would likely lose in any forum, because this has been tested multiple times. So I don't think it's a good strategy as a way of dealing with what's happening politically. I don't think there's anything more to say about that.
Yeah. Thank you.
Having spent 10 years at the tax division of the Justice Department, you're subject to late payment penalties, which can add up pretty substantially, pretty quickly. The real question here is, to what extent will tax law be enforced? Because the IRS, of course, has been cut to the bone. And I am also hearing from my tax division alumni group that the tax division will basically cease to exist. They're leaving a skeleton staff in place, I think, because they can't eliminate a division of the Justice Department without Congress, but what they are doing is they are taking all of the attorneys, the line attorneys in the various departments, and assigning them either to the civil division or the criminal division, and I don't know what kind of tax enforcement we're going to see. So,
As a counterpoint to that, the statute of limitations is very long. It would extend beyond the expiration of this administration.
6 years.
Yeah. So again, or longer, depending on the.
Well, if there's fraud, that's a whole other. Yeah. But it's 6 years from when the tax payments due. So for 2025, it would be 6 years starting April 15th of 2026. Yeah.
Daryl? I'm sorry, not Daryl. Drew?
I will just add to that, Shauna, that we do occasionally foreclose on properties that do have federal tax liens. We do notify the IRS, and the IRS can then swoop in and take the property and sell it themselves.
Okay, thank you.
The only thing I could add was I think the way they put Al Capone in jail was for income tax evasion.
Huh.
Except now we have alligator Alcatraz instead of regular Alcatraz.
That's right.
I could tell you a short vignette about how this issue has come up for me in the past, because it's kind of funny. A number of objectors have classified themselves as clergy.
Yeah.
And I had a case representing an employer who received a religious discrimination complaint for withholding federal tax, because the individual plaintiff was claiming that all monies he earned on earth are actually part of his religious mission, and that it was therefore discriminating against his religion, or him because of his religion, to withhold federal tax. he lost. Very
I was
easily.
going to say, how could I convert?
I will tell you that it was very popular when I was at the tax division to set up a church. And so everything went to the church, and you were just clergy and your house belonged to the church. The people who created a couple of those churches and were selling ministries went to jail, thanks to me.
Shauna?
I think they're doing that actually in Sullivan County. There are a lot of Hasidic Jews that are coming from Brooklyn, moving into Sullivan County and trying to get the religious tax exemption. And from what I heard, and there was an article in the New York Times about it a few years ago, was that it was really having an impact on their tax revenue. Because there were a lot of people that were also claiming benefits because of the income thresholds. And so they were, taking from the system and they weren't receiving the tax revenue. So.
Anyway.
Yeah.
We digressed.
Yeah.
We haven't even voted on this.
No,
Quickly.
I just
Sorry,
want to.
Drew.
What are we on?
Well, I'd like to, I just want to say to Daryl and Drew and the folks that work on these foreclosure proceedings at in our Department of Finance, how proud we are of the fact that we don't have to foreclose on a lot of properties, and we only had to go to auction on 6 or 9, I guess, is what you told us. That's makes our county look good. It makes us feel better knowing we're not taking properties away from people.
So let's vote.
Okay, ready to vote on this resolution for the quitclaim deeds? All in favor? Any opposed? That's unanimous.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Daryl, anything else?
Unless anyone has any questions, that's it.
Okay.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Let's go to Ruby Pullum, our Human Resources Commissioner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple of announcements. The Lunch and Learn that the department held in June was a great success. I think it was well attended and informational for both the staff and those staff that attended. We will be doing it again at another occasion, but I think the more we explain processes and answer questions from the departments, the better the partnership, and it's been working pretty well. The second is in our relocation to Green Street. I'm surprised Corsa didn't mention this, but we're in the process of relocating. ITS will be in the department on Friday at noon to start disconnecting our computer equipment and the phones. So we may not be readily available if there's a call, but we will respond to any questions or calls that we have given the time.
Where are you moving to?
Green Street,
The mental health building.
5th floor. Were you on vacation, Deborah?
Well, I was, yeah.
Administration and Human Resources are both moving over there.
Yeah.
I'm trying to figure out which.
5th floor.
The old
Oh, the
alcohol
other
and drug-
side of the Commons.
Yes.
Oh, my goodness.
It's
You might as well be in another state.
I still expect you to visit. We'll just have to put the candy jar outside the building so people will know where we are.
Is the Skylight Club still up on the top there?
I have not been to the 6th floor.
Okay.
My fob says 5th floor, and that's where I go, and that's the only place.
I don't even know whether that club still exists, does it? I know you're asking.
Old
It used to be
retreats
up there, and then I think they moved it over to St. John's or somewhere over there.
We have to go a long way for a hug.
I'll meet
Randy.
you halfway.
Ruby, just like, is the space adequate temporarily, or?
Yes, it is more spacious than we have now, but, we're always wanting more space.
Okay.
So Corsa and I will talk about,
Okay.
with the new building, as departments grow, other departments may lessen, and the movable walls, we may need a few movable walls. But anyway, I digress. But yes, it's going to be a big improvement space-wise. Our actual move date is Monday, the 14th, with any leftover things on the 15th, that Tuesday. But we hope to have everything set up and running, fully operational by Tuesday. And that's all I have to say, and I'm going to let Larry do the numbers.
Just ask a question about that?
Sure.
All of the cabinets and things that were moved into the old jail conference room, are they going to be moved as well?
Most of them are, because that's where we kept our supplies that we did not have room for in the office. But there are a couple of them that we're leaving. The orientations for July and August will continue to be held in the Scott Heyman Conference Room until we can work out some sort of parking plan for our visitors. And it may be necessary to continue to hold it where there's parking available.
Okay, well, it certainly has been not the best situation to have to use that for storage in that room. So anything that can get moved out of that, I think, will be an improvement. Okay, you want to go to Larry?
All right. Well, good morning, everybody. We'll run through our totals for the month. We had 795 county staff. 319 were election workers. The JTPAs, which is the Youth Employment Program, was up to 98, which is a really large number. They have summer youth going on, so that increases that. Gives us a total of 893 as of June 30th. As far as recruitment, we posted 31 new postings for the month, and currently we have 23 postings up for Tompkins County departments and 36 for the schools and municipalities, which this month will greatly increase as they get ready for the fall semester. Outreach, Lansing and Groton schools was out there, both of those doing mock interviews again with some of the seniors. That's a great relationships that we have out there. Civil service, meet the employer, with some reps from the Department of Labor. They're doing a demystifying civil service around the state. So we've partnered up with a couple of the reps from there. Monday, we're going to have another one over at Workforce. So after they go through the class with the state folks, they come and sit with me and I show them what positions we have and what we will have in the future. So it's been a really good partnership so far with that. Applications, 468, 270 of those were for the municipalities and 198 were for county departments. Exam applications, we received 124 of those. 18 exams were given. Help submissions, so 8 more people were appointed through the help program, which gives us a total of 147 since May of 24. We onboarded 12 more folks this month, 1 exit interview. Out of the 12, 11 opted for our health insurance, 5 for dental, 3 for vision, 8 opted for our pension plan. Some of them weren't eligible because they're seasonal folks, or they just opted not to. Leaves were disability. We had 36 disability claims, 14 cancer screening, 11 bereavement, 1 jury, and still 2 COVID. And as far as for the staff training, the Office Ready series has kicked off. Samantha's done a great job getting that rolling. And we have a next one coming up next week. So that's it for me, unless you have questions.
Larry, thank you. A lot of numbers. Is that on a spreadsheet I could just kind of look at?
Yeah, I can send it to you.
Great. Here's that. I was at the Soil and Water Board meeting, and the executive director of the Health Consortium did a presentation there because they're looking at, they still have some old, what they call the really the best health plans left at Soil and Water, and so they're looking at changing that to the platinum because it's less expensive. But and I think it went fairly well. There are a lot of good questions there, but the executive said the minimum increase for next year would be at 12%. and it could go as high as 19.
Yes.
So just wanted to share that.
And I just wanted to add, we were aware of some of that last year when the increase, so we've already started researching a lower cost health plan for our employees. We had an initial meeting with Elon Dowd at the Consortium last week, I believe, and to go over some numbers that we ourselves are going to propose. So it won't be a requirement, but we're hoping to give our employees a lower cost option. It will mean less going to the consortium, but we think it's in the best interest of our employees to have an option. So that information will be forthcoming as soon as we continue to play with the numbers.
Yeah, I'm just trying to let that settle in my head here and think of that one. We may want to have more discussion about that. Deborah, then Shauna.
Yeah, and I think we need to be prepared once those Medicaid cuts go in. It's going to increase the cost of health care for people who actually pay, because there are a lot of facilities that must treat people whether they're covered or not. So they're going to be treating people who don't have Medicaid to pay. The rest of us are going to have to make up the difference. And as the cost of health services goes up, the cost of insurance will go up accordingly. So we're really looking at a cliff.
Shauna?
I just wanted to make sure that we've also communicated with employees about the change to New York State paid prenatal leave that started January 1st, that added 20 hours of paid leave for those that are expecting or receiving prenatal care or medical care that are related to pregnancy.
We haven't done anything specific to that yet.
Okay. I think it would be helpful for our employees, and I know that that also covers infertility treatments too. And I can send you the information I received on that. And it was something that Kathy Hochul had pushed through for all New Yorkers.
Okay, thanks for bringing that to our attention, Shauna. Anything else, Ruby, that you want to report?
Nothing from me.
Okay. I'd like to move to Resolution E, which was a member-filed resolution on our agenda from Shauna, a resolution authorizing use of contingent funds to support county employee annual picnic and guest attendance. Shauna, do you want to move that and see if there's a second?
Sure, I'm happy to move it.
I'll second.
Seconded by Randy. Go ahead and present it.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. I just wanted to bring this forward. I know that this was something we're trying to watch our expenses, and this was something that Human Resources had decided would help that bottom line. And, you know, every year we go to this picnic, and it's been a time where our employees take the afternoon off, take a few hours off, bring their families, and it's a time for us to connect. And I personally have enjoyed this picnic for many years. We get to meet our staff, many that we don't see throughout the year. We get to meet their families. You know, that's their one, proud moment is to introduce their families to us. And it's just a real time for connection. And so I think that this is important. I realize that, we probably can't pay for the whole family to come, but I do think it's something that we should allow our employees to have a +1. And I think the cost that has been estimated was $15,000. Is that right?
17.
Oh, 17. And so I think, with our budget, I think this is important. We talk about being an employer of choice. And right now, government jobs are not as desirable as they once were, many, many years ago, where you had a great pension and you knew it was going to be a lifelong career. So I think the little things like this are something that could keep people here. So I feel really strongly about this, and I hope that my colleagues support this. I will say just one last thing, that I did do this as a member filed on our agenda in case it does not pass here today. I wanted to make sure
on
that
the legislature agenda.
Right. I just wanted to make sure that all 14 of us had that decision.
Randy.
I support it. I think it's worthwhile.
Well, I guess I've got to be the ogre here. I would not support this because we didn't budget for it. If we wanted to offer the employee to bring a guest and charge, I think $20 is what we were talking about, I wouldn't have a problem with that. But to pull another $17,000 out of contingency when we have so many demands on contingency and the possibility of things even this year that we're going to have to maybe exhaust our contingent fund. I feel exactly the way you do, Shauna, about it, but I just don't think I can support it. Deborah?
Yeah, I'm pretty conflicted about this. On the one hand, it's chump change, you know, in the larger context of our budget. But on the other hand, you know, I keep remembering my parents. If you watch the pennies, the dollars take care of themselves. And I know that we're looking at like $2 million of shortfall in the budget. That's going to have to come out of contingent or general fund or something. I just think we need to start practicing what we preach. As we head into our budget season, and every year we say we're going to spend less, I mean, we're, you know, tightening our belts, and then 14 of us have a pet thing that doesn't cost very much that they want to pass, and before you know it, you know, we're over budget. So I guess as much as I usually want to support our staff, I just think that we need to start tightening our belt now. So I don't think I'm going to vote for this.
What's the feedback been, Ruby? Hate to put you on the spot, but with the changes that were kind of coming.
Well, we really did not put it out for the employees' feedback. We made the announcement at the beginning of the year that our funding had been reduced, and these were the changes we were making, including the reduced 25-year club dinner, as well as the county picnic being for employees only. There were a few, but I wouldn't say they're general. There were some that were for it. There were some who were against it, but we haven't had any numbers specifically to say in support or not.
Are we offering an option for people to bring family if they pay?
We have announced save the dates, but we have not done anything as far as RSVPing with a guest or themselves. We're waiting until the 16th so that we'll know for sure. But we did not do anything as far as them paying to bring guests.
So my question is, if we did have them pay to bring guests, how much would we be charging per guest? Do we know?
We said $20, even though that would not cover the cost. The average, based upon what our vendors, that cost was like $56 per person.
Ouch.
Spread around. And we were estimating a number of 350. That's where we got the 17,000 from, by adding an additional 300 people.
Wow.
What was the number, Ruby?
$56
per person.
That's extreme.
Shauna?
I mean, obviously we can't switch things up, but I think next year we look towards doing like a family style. Many, many years ago we had family style, and typically you could do that for $15, $20 a person, and that would allow families to come back. And I get that the food trucks, they're fun, it's different food, but the other part too is that you're waiting in line for half of the picnic to get your food.
Yeah, which is why we increased vendors last year. We've decreased vendors to 3 food vendors, 2 dessert vendors. So that's why part of the proposal was, if we did increase the numbers, we'd probably have to look for another vendor, which is late in the game for this, because the lines would be so long that you would end up frustrated. Now, we did talk about just having a family style hamburger, hot dog picnic and having department heads grill the food. But that's an abrupt change from the previous years, and we need to lead into that. So based upon our budget for this year, that's the decision we made with the reductions, or those two things.
I remember, Shauna, when Enfield Fire Department did some of them for us and did a chicken barbecue and had all of the picnic stuff.
Yeah, it's nice.
It was, they did a good job too.
Yeah.
I'll support it to get it to
Chicken
the
barbecue,
floor.
people.
I'm sorry?
I'll support it to get it to the Florida legislature.
Well, shall we vote then? All those in favor?
So we have to have 4, is that right? Since we have a committee of 6?
Yeah, you're right.
Okay.
Oh, you said member filed?
All in favor?
I have a member file too.
I didn't vote in favor. I'm sorry, I just put my hand
Okay.
up. So 3 in favor, those opposed?
2 Grinches.
2 opposed. So we know it's going to be on the agenda Tuesday night.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, let's go back to the other resolutions. Resolution A, appointment to the Greater Tompkins County Municipal Health Insurance Consortium. And someone want to move that? Randy, seconded by Lee. Discussion about this one. This is,
Again, welcome.
yeah, this is the one that had Daryl.
Yeah, can't you tell?
You're willing to do that, Daryl?
Yes.
Thank you. Those in favor? Any opposed? That's unanimous. All right, Resolution B, Contingent Fund Appropriation, Department of Social Services, Budget Adjustment for Temporary Housing Assistance, THA, Shelter Services. And this was revised in Health and Human Services. Someone want to move that? Shauna, seconded by Randy. Who wants to tell us about this one?
Kit.
Hi, everybody. Oh,
Hello, back again. Thanks, Kit. Go
here
ahead.
I am. So this is really the expense. Oh, sorry. I don't know what's going on with my camera. This is really program expenses related to our current hotel that we are using as a shelter site. What occurred was most of the time, as it indicates in the resolution, the costs associated with shelter will be offset by the program reimbursement that we can seek. However, we had a couple of months when we began utilizing that site, or we were trying to utilize that site. The site got contracted for, and we were not able to hire staff nearly as quickly as we were hoping, and not able to get that site up and running. So we had a couple of months where we were developing the program and hiring and getting things moved in there to be able to run the program. And that was not, that we unfortunately are not able to seek reimbursement for that. So these expenses are related to that. And you can see at the bottom, they're offsetting reimbursements. The professional services are related to the security services that we utilize for that program as well. So, so the total there down at the bottom is 518,427 that we're requesting.
Then why does it say $868,427?
In the agenda, it's changed.
The agenda is corrected.
Or do you mean above it?
Wait, so what?
Yeah, it needs to be changed in the second place on the, in the resolved.
It looks like the change is that we're taking only $518,000 out of the contingent fund, but $350,000 out of the mandate contingent fund. Is that the change that was made?
Yeah, that would make sense.
Right.
I just want to be sure we understand how much money we're spending here.
Yeah, I'm curious too. Yeah.
Sure. Thomas, if you're on Can you weigh in? I'm not sure we can speak to the mandate contingent fund, but
give me 1 second, I'll pull it up. So yeah, that $800,000 amount is the correct amount. That's how much we need to increase our program expenses, because that is how much we're spending overall. So I think that to counterbalance, because anything that we have that we spend in expenditures needs to balance out in.
So that's the money that we as a department need. And I think that 500,000 figure was adjusted by county administration due to the mandate contingent fund potential of utilizing that. But that's not something, I think that might be something we need somebody from county administration to speak to.
Well, yeah, the total is the 868,000. It's just a question of which contingent fund it's coming out of.
Correct.
Okay, thanks.
But this is coming out of the general contingent fund, right?
The 500.
Yeah. How do we
18.
How do we mechanize the rest of the money out of the mandate contingent fund? Corsa?
I think it's, unfortunately, Norma is not here, who has been dealing with that, but the totality of the program is what we're looking at. So basically, based on our current program definition and what we're doing, we require this additional money to be able to meet the cost of providing the services. We've analyzed the contingent account. I think we have about a little bit over $1 million in it. So we will be able to pay for this, but we have to adjust the contingent account maybe at the next month meeting.
Oh, that's what I'm asking.
Yes.
Will there be another resolution?
There will be.
Okay.
There will be.
All right. Other questions? This is a hard one, but we don't have much choice. Randy?
Yeah, so I remember the mandate contingent fund we talked about a year or two ago. And I think it's when we got some funding from reimbursement for social services we had provided that was a couple years old.
Couple $1 million that just dropped in our lap, yeah.
Right, and so we put it in this separate fund for mandate expense.
Yep.
So is that okay to do that? I mean, is that a legal thing to do?
Yeah, it is in our budget as a contingent account. So it's not a reserve, it's a contingent account in our budget, so yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, ready to vote? Those in favor? Those opposed? Those reluctantly in favor?
Yeah.
Well, I'm just following with Randy here. You know, if that account was started with a couple $1 million, what's left in it?
We'll provide you update at the next month meeting when we bring in a resolution for amending the contingent account.
Okay.
Okay, that's unanimous. Thank you, Kit.
Thank you.
Let's go to Resolution C, a contingent fund appropriation, county administration, authorization to contract for Tompkins County minimum wage plan study and budget transfer. Who wants to move that? Deborah? Is there a second? Seconded by Randy. Corsa, you want to talk about this one?
Yes, so I believe last year you approved funding the study with $50,000. So those money was earmarked in the contingent account during the budget process. So we just issued the RFP. We're going through the process to get the project moving. So this will allow us to actually start spending against your approved expense.
Can I offer a couple of word changes? I'm going to dualize this. To conduct a Tompkins County minimum wage plan, line 5, wage plan study, I think is what it should say. And then in 11, from 10 to 11, implementation of the Tompkins County Minimum Wage Plan Study, because we're not implementing a wage plan. And down in 14, exploring the impacts of establishing a countywide minimum wage. And it's not just the impacts, but I think the purpose in going forward, one of the purposes was to determine if it is feasible and legal for us to do so. And that's not clear here. You know, we can do a conceptual study about what the impacts of it would be, but is it really feasible? I think you need to add that language in there.
So you just want to say exploring the feasibility?
Feasibility is fine.
And legality.
In doing this RFP, in seeking the consultants on this, we separated the legal analysis from the conceptual analysis to do the conceptual analysis first, and then the legal analysis would come separately. So this consultant will not be doing, these funds would not be going toward legal analysis of a local minimum wage.
So it should just be exploring the feasibility and impacts.
Okay.
So if we don't determine whether it's legal first,
Why are we spending the $50,000?
Exactly.
Oh, good question.
Yeah, I believe that was the legislature's desire in approving this study. We had, had the legal discussion, and I think the discussion and debate at the legislature was, let's study whether it's worthwhile before studying whether it's preempted or not by state law.
Well, given we just spent $868,000 from the contingency fund, I'd rather not spend another $50,000 until we know if it's even possible to move forward.
Yeah, I honestly don't remember having a discussion about, well, let's explore the concept and we'll worry about whether it's legal later. That doesn't, I can't imagine I would have agreed to that.
So I think what has happened here is that there's a group from, I think it's NYU. Is that right, Maury?
It's Columbia.
Columbia. Yes. It's all the same.
Is that still operating?
Yeah, right.
It is still operating, and last that I spoke to Dennis Fan, his clinic is still operating at the law school as well. Yeah. But I wouldn't assume that to be a certainty.
Yeah. So they're the ones that have agreed to actually do the legal research, and they think that essentially we would have to bring this forward as a lawsuit, is my understanding, in order to get some type of home rule legislation in order to be able to do this. The problem is it's like a chicken or the egg. Like, we have to have the data to back this up. We also have to have the support of the legislature. The legislature is not willing to support it if we don't have the data, which is good government. And so I think, right now we're trying to figure out what would this look like. What would the numbers look like? What is the viability for it in our county? Because they're not going to move forward legally if there's not a majority of us that want to move forward with it. Is that right, Maury?
That is essentially a fair summary of the debate that occurred last year. Our assumption, given the state of the law right now, is that any local minimum wage statute would likely be challenged and would have to be litigated to the Court of Appeals in order to establish the authority of the county to do that type of thing, because there is a 1964 decision of the New York Court of Appeals that precluded the city of New York from adopting a higher local minimum wage, which that decision has not been overturned. The folks at Columbia have been doing research and working on briefs, basically, along the lines of, looking at cases that have chipped away at that rule and have chipped away at state preemption generally, and as it might be applied to minimum wages. And at least are prepared to assist with litigation. Whether they would undertake the entirety of the case remains to be seen. But yes, in order to have this authority, it would need to be established. It would, in all likelihood, need to be established through litigation. It's conceivable we could pass a local law and nobody contests it, but I would think there are a number of large employers in Tompkins County that might.
I can think of one.
Randy.
Yeah, from the conversation we had last year, I think it was around the current wage that was identified by Alternatives and MIT or whoever's doing that study now, and that many nonprofits use that as that's their minimum wage that they, and so the discussion came is, how we know that's even correct.
Yeah.
So and it may be, but that's where this came from. Is let's do real research by county level, because I think that nonprofits are looking for some guidance on this as well. We're looking at an increase of almost $6 an hour on the latest one, and that's a big impact for an awful lot of people from 18 to 24 or whatever.
Yeah, they can't afford it.
Yeah, right. Yeah, so I think that was how that came from. But could you reread the second resolved, what you're suggesting, or the first resolved?
Line 14, designee to enter into a contract with a successful bidder to conduct a study exploring the impacts and feasibility, or the feasibility simply of establishing a county-wide minimum wage.
Okay, that's fine. The way the first resolved says that Tompkins County Legislature hereby directs the county administrator to proceed with the implementation of the Tompkins County minimum wage.
Study. Lee's original
wage plan
concern, well, there's a county minimum wage plan study.
Okay, so
we don't have a plan yet.
Okay, so we'd
Same
add
as
the word
title.
Right.
So add the word study. Is that
What about substituting study for plan? Saying to conduct a Tompkins County minimum wage study.
There you go. That works better.
That probably makes sense, Mark.
You got to change it in the title too, then.
Yeah. Well, we've got both words in the title, so just cross out plan, I guess.
Art, are we going to put that, you still want to put that issue, the question about feasibility in line 14?
Oh, so what exactly are they studying? They're trying to figure out how to calculate a valid living wage, minimum wage?
Yeah, the impacts of it in our community and to the nonprofits and the businesses here locally.
Right.
Mike, so I just want to remind my colleagues that we did in fact pass a resolution with the intent of going forward with the study. This is simply allocating the funds to pay for the RFP. And so, I hate to think that government's redundant, but, it would be 2 steps forward, 8 steps back if we don't approve this, at least out of this committee and, moving forward in the legislature. And, not to mention the fact that I've been hounding Corsa for the past 6 months to get this RFP out the door.
I agree with that.
For the debate.
Deborah?
Well, if what we're studying is the methodology of determining what a living wage is and what that would look like if we tried to implement it countywide, this makes sense. But the way it's written, it's not entirely clear. Are we talking about how we calculate a living wage? And so we'll use that as a jumping off point to consider whether we want to try to implement one versus we're going to study what our living wage that we're going to implement is going to look like. So that's a distinction that's worth bearing in mind. I can vote for that.
Yes.
So Corsa, we'll make sure that our wording aligns with the RFP.
Yes.
So that we get what we want out of it.
Yes, so we pull in as Maurice said, when we pull the RFP together and we discussing it, there's a lot of input from staff in terms of what it should look like. But we went back to the resolution and then decided that now we took a lot of words out, made it I think it was like 2 or 3 pages RFP to say we want to know if we want to have a minimum wage, what can it be? And how will that impact businesses and nonprofit in the county? So that's what we are studying, the impact of a minimum wage and what the minimum wage can be over the state minimum wage, and how will that impact businesses and nonprofit within the county.
Lee?
Two things. One, I wanted to use the word feasibility because before Maury weighed in as to the study of the legality being a separate issue. So
yeah,
I'm not tied to that word now because the feasibility was meaning, can we do this? The second part is, has the RFP been developed? Or are you still crafting it?
No, the RFP is out. We released the RFP last week. We sent a communication out last week about it. We have, I have not been informed if anybody has placed a bid on it yet. It's been published for 1 month. Let me just say this as well. For any reason, by the time the RFP is reviewed and maybe we are willing to go into an agreement with the consultant to do the study, there is information to the legislature to say, no, we cannot do this. It's not necessary. It will not cost us anything. We can just reverse costs.
And then Shauna will hound you again.
Run away.
Well, there was more to the reason I bring it up, there was more to the discussion than simply matching.
Green Street, so.
I'm here another 4 years, Corsa. Sorry. Hopefully.
But there was more to the discussion, and I hope that RFP expands on it than
Yes.
simply meeting the living wage, because there was a concern about what it would do to the municipal and local governments who employ, for instance, temporary or summer or youth type help. The second part had to do with nonprofits whose revenues are based on federal and state streams and grants that don't necessarily entitle them to reimbursement simply because we've raised the wages that they're paying. The third thing had to do with
These are all
the impact cross county borders. And the fourth was, is there a distinction in living wage when you consider different geographical areas of the county? Because the living wage in the center part of Ithaca in 14850 is significantly more than it is in 13073 or 13053. And that's where I was hoping that this RFP will reflect the living wage, at least as part of the discussion, and whether that really is a countywide consideration.
Absolutely, and I think it is not too late for us to, as far as I understand, I remember the way we crafted the resolution provides the consultant ability to do that analysis, the impact in different locations within the county, but we can relook at it, and if it's not answering a specific set of questions, we can do an amendment if we decide to move forward and we select a consultant in terms of what other things we want to see the report show us.
Yeah, one of the impacts that the RFP asks the consultant to look at is the impact in the border areas of the county.
Yeah, I jabbed Deborah earlier about the out-migration of businesses in Lansing down to the city, but my concern comes back to out in my district and Mike's district, and even to Randy's to some extent, that you could force cross-border relocation simply through this, and I want to make sure that impact is still part of the discussion.
Yeah.
I very much agree with you, Lee. I've said all along, if we were to implement a higher minimum wage in Tompkins County, it will be to the benefit of all our surrounding counties and the region, because why do I want to open a business in Tompkins County when I can go over, as you say, across the border to Cortland County? And we're already seeing it, by the way, Take a drive up there and see all the new businesses in Cortland, and go down toward Elmira and see that. They don't want to deal with Tompkins County on so many issues. And I think it's, from an economic development standpoint, it is, this could be a real impediment even further. And I know it costs a lot to live here, but do we want to say, do we want to give businesses one more reason not to locate here and hire people? I don't know. I have real mixed feelings about this. We've studied this before. I know back when Joe Mariani was the administrator, we had quite a discussion and quite a study on the issue and the impacts of having living wage would be on the businesses, particularly the not-for-profits, has been mentioned here. And we implemented the living wage standard for our contracts that we deal with, but we didn't try to say that everybody has to have that in the county-wide. So that's where I'm having a real problem with this, as I've had all along. And now that we've got these demands on our contingency, I'm even feeling worse about it. Shauna, and then Deborah.
Yeah, I think you could also use that argument for why it would be good for Tompkins to have a living wage, is because what we see is that people from surrounding counties actually come to Tompkins because they get paid more. One example is our TCAT drivers. We pay them a great wage, and they come from as far as Pennsylvania and Binghamton, because they're good jobs. They're you know what, $25, $26 an hour, great benefits, and that draws people from outside. So, you know, I think we could certainly say it's going to draw employers out, but the reality is that it draws employees in. And I have friends that are engineers and foremen at, one was at Marietta and one was at the Paul Corporation in Cortland. And he's like, we cannot get people in the Cortland area to save our lives to work here. And so, you know, I think money talks. And even as a county here, we see a lot of our employees that don't live in our county, they come here because, I mean, not just a great place to work, but, you know, some of our salaries are competitive.
The discussion. I guess we're on these amendments. Are these friendly? I'm sorry, Deborah, go ahead.
Well, you know what, there's just so many arguments going back and forth about this. I think that's the point of why you have a study. We've already determined that we needed to have a study. And my recollection is that the real impetus for this was that massive jump in the living wage calculation, and none of us on the legislature really understanding how that was calculated. So I think that's part of this study. I think these other impacts that we're going back and forth about are part of this study. We've already said we need it. I think that we need to move forward with it, especially just to get Shauna off course's back.
Thank you, Deborah. Much appreciated.
No, I agreed to support the study before, but I want to make sure that those points were addressed. And I'm reiterating at this point, and I'll support the resolution.
Are these changes friendly? Are they not friendly to anyone?
They're friendly to me.
They're friendly to me.
Okay. Then Taylor, have you got them all?
Yeah, we just confirm we're just changing line 2 to remove the word plan. We're changing line 5 to remove the word plan and substitute study. And we're doing the same with line 11.
And you're also changing the title.
Yes.
Are we adding feasibility on line 14? In exploring the impacts and feasibility.
Yeah, last statement from Lee was he wasn't committed to it. Is that a commitment now?
It's up. I like it.
I like it.
Okay.
That works for me.
Feasibility and impacts?
Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you, Taylor.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay. With those changes then, are we ready to vote? Those in favor? Those opposed? That passes with one negative vote. Mine. All right, we're already over, so we got to kind of move these other resolutions right along. Resolution D, request to amend Tompkins County opioid settlement fund contract for the Tompkins County Public Library. Someone want to move that? Moved by Randy, seconded by Lee. Who wants to say anything about this one?
This went through the Health and Human Services Committee as well and passed. Right?
Oh, that's fine with me.
We okay with it? All those in favor? Any opposed? That's unanimous. All right, now we're to resolution concerning tax stabilization reserve. And that's the one that we have the verbiage for on our desks. And I'm going to ask if there's any questions or who wants to move it first? Deborah, seconded by Lee.
I think the memo from Maury really lays it out there.
Yeah.
Pretty straightforward.
Well, we need to do this correction.
Right, exactly. It's a follow-on to the discussion that occurred at the June 3rd meeting of the legislature, where there was a desire to make an expenditure out of this reserve, and until this corrective action is taken, the funds in that reserve remain parked and inaccessible. So basically, this is a correction to provide the county access to money that are put aside for particular purposes. So it's completely budget neutral. It's just to get access to our money back.
Any other questions or comments? Those in favor? Any opposed? That's unanimous. Any committee member reports? Thank you.
I think we put everybody through their paces today, Mike.
All right. Are ready to adjourn? We're adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you, Taylor.